Mark chapter 1, beginning in verse 19, says, "And going on a little farther, Jesus saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him." I love the opening of this text because it gives us an encouragement to not quit. It said, and going on a little farther. There are those times in our lives where we feel like we've gone as far as we need to go, or maybe we feel like we've gone as far as we can go, and we look and we see the goal in front of us, but we're just a little bit tired and we just decide to settle. Jesus didn't decide to settle. It said he went a little farther. There are those callings in our lives that we have to just keep moving until we get to them. We can't quit. We cannot give up. We have to persevere. We have to endure. We have to be faithful. Jesus went a little farther. Please understand in this moment that he had already selected Peter and Andrew. Peter, the one who it would be revealed to when Jesus said, "Who do people say that I am?" And they all gave him answers. But then he said, "Peter, who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "You are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God." It was revealed to Peter by God the Father Almighty to the Son, to everyone who was listening. It was also Peter who stood and preached the message of the gospel on the day of Pentecost, and 3,000 people were saved and baptized that day. He'd already picked Peter, but it said that he went a little farther. When God has given you a plan, when he's given you a goal, when he's put a vision in your heart, don't stop here if it's over there. Keep going until you fulfill and sit in and stand on and live in the middle of what God has promised you. He went a little farther. And so he went a little farther, and who was it that he found? He found James and John. Now, these are two interesting characters. It was James who actually would be the very first martyr of all of the apostles. Or not the first martyr, but he would be the first of the apostles who was martyred. And then the last of them was actually John. So we have James, the first of the apostles to be martyred, and then we have John, the last of the apostles to die from the earth. And so we have these two guys that were like the wings, if you will. And fascinating was because of their personality types, Jesus called them the sons of thunder. They were the two that were a little more exciting than some of the others. And what I love about this is that Jesus brought these guys on his team, and then he went a little farther and he brought these guys on his team. And it forces us to embrace the diversity and the giftedness of each one of us and not let our differences divide us, but rather see the strength in our differences so that all of us together can achieve the things that God has called us to do. Because you and me, all of us, we need people in our lives, quite frankly, who will stretch us and who will encourage us to move just a little bit farther. There are some people who they're great. They just look at you where you are and say, "Hey, you're doing awesome. Good job. Wonderful." And you're like, "Yeah, but I wanted to make it over there." And they're like, "Yeah, but everything's good right here. You're fine." And then there are those people that say, "Well, then go." Like, if that's what you want, come on, let's go over there. James and John are those people. They are those ambitious people that do not let us settle. And Jesus knew that they needed to be on the team. And we have to have people like this on our team. But it also is a lesson in conflict resolution, because James and John created a lot of tension in the conversation among the disciples. Remember the moment that Jesus was obviously the head of the team. And James and John showed up one day because at the table, if you sat on his right and on his left, that was the principal positions. Those were the principal positions. And so they wanted those spots, and they came to ask Jesus if they could have those spots when he established his kingdom. But they didn't just come by themselves. They actually brought their mother with them. It would add weight to the conversation. They were maybe even trying to possibly manipulate Jesus, because even if he would think about saying no to them, was he gonna say no to their mom? And so there they are asking for that thing. And Jesus said, it's not mine to give, but rather my Father who is in heaven. And it kind of ended the conversation. But the disciples got really annoyed by it. But yet, then they had to turn around and they had to work it out. And maybe this is just for some of you, because I know you're going to Father's Day lunches and dinners today, and you're going to be around people that you might not like. And so I want to help you. I want to help you in this moment. Because we have this moment where there are these two guys that created a conflict that the disciples had to work through it. And Jesus gives us this sort of pathway to reconciliation. He says, look, if somebody offends you, you need to go to them. And that's exactly what the disciples did. They went in and said, what are y'all doing? Why are you trying to take the seats? Like, here we are doing the thing that he said. Remember when Jesus said, if you walk in a room and you just like see a bunch of places, go sit in the worst seat so that you can be honored by being lifted up and brought into the other seat. Remember? But what are they doing? I want that seat. Like, they're doing the opposite thing of what he told them to do. And so the disciples are irritated. Like, they have this conversation with them. And they started to work through it. Why? Because that's the first process. If somebody offends you, go to them, talk to them, work it out. But if they won't hear you, now take a mutual friend and say, okay, how about a third opinion here in the middle of all of this? And then if that doesn't work, he says, go to church leaders and have a conversation with them so that a decision can actually be made about this whole situation. And if that doesn't work, then you can excommunicate them. And we see this in moments where even in the church at Corinth, the Apostle Paul said, hey, there's a guy doing some things that he shouldn't be doing, and you've embraced him and you shouldn't embrace him, and I want you to kick him out of the church for the sake of his soul, that his soul would be saved, even though his flesh would be destroyed. So you have this where the excommunication actually brings resolution, but the goal is to not get there. And I don't know how you feel about sometimes this process of reconciliation, but sometimes I just look at it as some boxes and I actually don't want it to work out. And I'm going to do this because he said it, and I'm hoping they won't, and I'm hoping they won't, I'm hoping they won't, so I can be done. I don't know if that's how you've ever felt about it. But that's when we know that our heart's in the wrong place. And if our heart's in the wrong place, we need time in prayer. We need time in the Word so that our heart can be molded, so that our goal, our actual desire is not to check a box so I can move on to the next step. It's so that I can actually have resolution because I need these people in my life. Because here's the thing. When we mislabel people as our enemies who are our friends, when the persecution comes, and persecution is coming, then we will not have the support emotionally and spiritually from the people God has called around us to be friends because we mislabeled them. And now when true enemies show up, because there are enemies. Let me just say, if you are a child of God, you'll have enemies. You'll have persecution. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news. I don't know if you've been watching what's going on, but this world's going crazy right now. And one of the things that we are seeing in the craziness of the world is there are just some ideas you will not ever be able to reconcile. The flesh is against the spirit is against the flesh. They are opposed to one another. They will never be reconciled. Jesus said it like this in Luke chapter 12 and verse 51. He said, do you think that I came to give peace on earth? No, but rather division. For from now on, in one house, 5 will be divided. 2 against 3 and 3 against 2. They will be divided. Father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother. He was looking at them and he's saying, do you think I came to bring peace? Of course they thought he came to bring peace. What did the prophets foretell? They said he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Do you think that I came to bring peace? Yes. What did the angels shout in the heavens to the shepherds on the night that Jesus was born? Peace on earth. I'm pretty sure that's part of the point. But what was he saying? He was saying from now on, now that I'm here and that the word has been made flesh and the gospel has been fulfilled in your hearing, now my message will divide soul and spirit. My message will divide what is flesh and what is spirit. What is the kingdom of God and what is the kingdom of the enemy. We see this all the way back in Genesis. God said, let there be light. He saw that the light was good, but what did the light do? It separated light from darkness. When the light comes, there is always separation from darkness. When the gospel is declared, there is always separation. And Jesus is saying, my word is coming, and it's not coming to bring peace, but rather there will be division. Now, the thing is, everybody can be on the peace side because the gospel's been given to everyone. So it's not that an enemy is an enemy because I don't like them. What it means is if someone is against the gospel, they're against me. That's what it means. And that means that there cannot be peace because there's division. Like, let me put it out there like this, because sometimes people, let me use a metaphor. It's not a nice metaphor, but it's Father's Day, so I think we can handle it. Especially in America, we have to deal with this because we have freedoms, and freedoms are awesome until freedoms are abused. So, like, if we have freedom of religion, okay, I believe Jesus Christ is Lord. That's what I believe. And somebody might believe in the God of Muhammad. We'll never agree on this. There's no reconciling that division. Now, that does not mean that I can't work with that person. It doesn't mean that I can't ride on the same bus with that person. It just means that we're never going to agree. But here's the conflict. We can work that out. But if they're in a classroom teaching my child now we can't work that out. Now we're not riding in the same bus, we're not sitting in the same room, we're not going now I can't deal with that. So there always comes a place where the gospel will bring you to a point of division. We should live at peace as much as we can, but we'll never sacrifice our values, ever. And so Jesus is telling us, look, there's gonna be moments where there's going to be division because of the gospel. But here's the thing, with a bunch of saints in the church, if there's division, it's not because of the gospel. And we can't use scriptures like that as an excuse to devour each other. We can't use scriptures like that as an excuse to not like one another. There are different personalities and temperaments. Jesus purposefully went a little further and picked two people who he called the sons of thunder. Why? Because they were necessary for the team. So we work through what we need to work through. We embrace the team. That makes us better so we can take the gospel further. Jesus went a little further. And he found James and John in the boat. And then he said to them, follow me. And immediately, they left dear old dad in the boat. And they just followed Jesus. So here's where our conversation is going to take a little turn. Let's talk about family. Let's talk about dads. Let's talk about kids. Let's talk about family for a minute. But to do that, I want to kind of drop back to the Old Testament. We see throughout the gospel, beginning with the patriarchs and then moving into the priest and the king and the prophets, and then even into the New Testament with the apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers. We see these elders that are leader elders among the people of God. And it was among these people of God and these people of God and these people of God. And so let's go all the way sort of back to the beginning and let's talk about Abraham for a minute. Because in Genesis chapter 18 and verse 19, it said, God chose Abraham that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham all of what he has promised him. So he chose him so that Abraham could be obedient, so that God could give him the things that he promised him. In the absence of the obedience, there would also be the absence of the reward of the promise. He chose him to receive the reward, but Abraham could still choose to not obey and therefore disqualify himself from the reward. This is a lesson for all of us because, yes, God has so loved the whole world, but his love or his salvation doesn't just fall on us. We have to receive his salvation, receive that grace. How? Through faith. That we believe in our heart that Jesus was raised from the dead and we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord. That's how we receive that promise. God chose us, but he chose us to receive, and so we have to actually participate in that receipt. And so God chose Abraham. So how exactly did Abraham live his life out? How did he live his life with his family? Skipping kind of the story, if you're new to the Bible, just do me a favor, go home today and read Genesis 18 through 26. If you're not new, then you're gonna know most of this. We're gonna skip the part of Hagar and Ishmael, and we're just gonna move on to Sarah and Isaac. So God spoke to Abraham and promised him that he would have a child of promise. And that happened when Sarah was about 90 and Abraham was about 100. It was a supernatural, miraculous move of God upon that family, and they had an impossible child to have. But they had Isaac, and so they were raising Isaac, and it came to a place, and we see it in Genesis chapter 21 and verse 8, that Isaac grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. So let me just say this right out of the gate to you parents. Parenting is probably going to be, especially you new parents, it's probably going to be the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. It will also be the most rewarding thing that you will ever do in your life, and nothing even comes close or compares. I don't care how well you do in work. I don't care how well you do at life. It doesn't matter. None of it matters compared to how you do as a parent. There is nothing greater than raising your kids. There's no greater joy, no greater call, no greater anything. Raising children is the top of the shelf. It's as good as it gets. And so those of you who, you might be younger thinking, I don't know, this whole kind of career life looks a whole lot, it pales in comparison to raising kids. I don't know, the world's getting, kids are the best thing ever. They're the best thing ever. They'll drive you crazy, they're expensive, they don't listen half the time, like whatever, it's the best thing ever. So here, especially to you young parents, it's hard. Like Ben was up here talking about sleepless nights. He's like, I'm gonna miss those days. I've never missed one day, ever, not once. A 2-year-old crawling, peeing in the bed and saying, I love you, Daddy, never missed that, ever. But it said when he came to that place and was weaned that they had a great feast. Look, you need to know the moments to celebrate. Because your kids are gonna go through seasons, they're gonna go through rites of passage, they're going to accomplish things, they're gonna win things, celebrate them. There's gonna be a lot of discipline and a lot of teaching along the way, but what we should remember 20 years later are the celebrations of the wins. We should remember the celebrations of the achievements. When he was weaned, what did he do? He threw a great feast. When your kid does something awesome, celebrate that louder than the discipline for the thing they didn't do right. The discipline will bring correction so that they don't do it again, but the reward for the good behavior amplifies their pursuit of good. Yes, they have to neglect the bad, but you want them to pursue the good, so celebrate it when they do. Celebrate the win. When they worked hard and did something, celebrate that louder than when they were lazy. Like, I don't want to give my kid the same reward when they didn't do well because they were lazy. I want to give them a greater reward because they worked hard, because they were diligent, so that they'll know, keep working hard. Keep serving, keep doing the thing. Why? Because words like perseverance, words like faithfulness, words like endurance, they're in the gospel. The one who endures to the end will be saved. There's a lot of principles that we teach our kids as 3-year-olds that will actually help them in their faith when they're 35 to endure. So celebrate those big moments. So this is what they did. They celebrated the big moment. But Ishmael, who was in the house, who was the son of Hagar, the servant in the home, who was kind of put forward. It's a whole story. It's a whole story. There was conflict there. And so a decision had to be made to resolve the conflict. And Abraham was very troubled by what he needed to do. God had revealed the solution to Sarah, his wife, but Abraham didn't want to do it. And so in prayer, we see this further in Genesis chapter 21 and verse 12. It said, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said to him, do not be displeased because of the boy and because of your servant woman. But whatever Sarah says to you, do all that she tells you. For through Isaac shall your name be exalted. Okay, so Abraham has to make a really tough decision, and he has to also listen to his wife. Now, for some of you guys, that's hard. Can we talk about Ephesians 5 for a minute? Let's just do this. It's fun. It's Father's Day. Y'all know that scripture that says that the husband is the head of the wife as Jesus is the head of the church? Y'all know that one? Like, I don't need to read it, right? Like, we try and avoid it. Preachers avoid that whole, like, section the best we can, right? Nobody wants to hear about that. And so we, though, sometimes think that gives us an excuse to actually not work alongside of, because before that whole conversation on submission is the first conversation, which says submitting one to another. You're all gonna submit to each other. You're all gonna love each other. You're like it says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. Well, that doesn't mean she doesn't love me. It just means I'm the model of love in the house. And wives, submit to your husbands. It doesn't mean I don't submit to her. It just means that she's the model of submission in the house. Why? Because we're told to love each other and we're told to submit to one another. So here's one of those moments where I don't know if you've been paying attention to the gospel, but it just seems like when there's a moment regarding something sort of critical involving a child, God a lot of times speaks to the mom. She has a discernment about her babies that is at a higher level than dads seem to be aware of. Okay, I'll remind you since you're looking at me like that. We have this moment where Sarah was made aware that Isaac was the child of promise and he could not be raised in the same house with Ishmael or he wouldn't be the person that God called him to be. We also see the moment a little bit later when God tells Rebekah that of Jacob and Esau, it is Jacob who will carry the promise to build a nation. We also go a little bit further and we see where it was Bathsheba who understood that it was Solomon who would be the next king that would sit on the throne of David. And just in case anybody forgot, when we make our way all the way to the New Testament, it was Mary who said to Jesus, it's now time to do your miracle. He said, no, it's not my time yet. And she wasn't going to argue with him. She just looked at him. And what did he do? What did Jesus do? Exactly what his mom said to do. So I'm just wanting you to know that God spoke to Sarah, God spoke to Rebekah, God spoke to Bathsheba, and God definitely spoke to Mary. So don't think for 1 minute that just because you, wife, have been called to help your husband as he leads your house, that suddenly God doesn't speak to you. God absolutely speaks to you. He said, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. So ladies, I don't want you to abdicate your hearing from God to your husband, because God will speak to you. But let me tell you also what God will do. God will speak to your husband for you, for your best benefit. And in those moments, you need to trust him and you need to follow him and you need to help him, because if God is leading him, guess what? God's leading you. So here we have this moment where God leads the family through Sarah. Abraham submits to that. Why? Because what he knew more than anything was the voice of the Lord, and he recognized the voice of the Lord through his wife. So now Ishmael has been removed from the house. Now they are raising Isaac in this household as they were told to do. And they demonstrated things to him. They demonstrated faith to him. They demonstrated worship to him. They demonstrated sacrifice to him. And so now we come to a moment in his later teen years, almost young adult years. And God really asked Abraham to do something quite unfair. He said, you know, your son, your only son whom you love, the one who the promise has been made to, the one who because of him your children will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. I need you to give that son back to me. And Abraham trusted him. I think this is where it's really hard as a parent today, because we sometimes, we're never gonna be asked to do that. And yet we're asked to do that every day, because God tells us how to run our households, dads. God tells us how to raise our children, and when we don't want to, because we're afraid if I do that, I might lose my child, what you are doing is you are fearing something and not putting your trust in him. I promise you, when you lead your house the way God has called you to lead your house, that even if they stray, he will bring them back. Why? Because that's the promise. Train a child up in the way that they should go. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. But you have to train them in that way. And so Abraham was not afraid. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 19 says very clearly that he understood that God was able even to bring Isaac back from the dead. So he wasn't worried about this. He trusted God. So he takes Isaac along in this journey. And so they're on their way up the mountain. It's Isaac and Abraham and a donkey with some stuff on it. And then Isaac, all of a sudden in chapter 22 and verse 7, it said, he goes, "My father." And Abraham said, "Yes, my son, here I am." And he said, "Behold, the fire and the wood. But where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" Now I'll tell you what I like about that, is that Isaac was so astute to worship, he understood what they needed and he knew they didn't have everything. I want my kids to be so aware of what worship is that they notice whether or not my knees are bowed down. They notice whether or not my hands are in the air. They notice whether or not I clap my hands. They notice whether or not I lift my voice. They notice whether or not I left my wallet in the car. If I open the door and I go to get out, I want so, Dad, your wallet. What did Isaac say? I see all the stuff, but where is that? See, this is one of the things that bothers me about modern church. And there's no fix for it. And we're all guilty. We're all doing the same thing, like this online giving. We all do it this way. I kind of miss the days when your kids would watch you put the check in the bucket. I miss those days. Because they don't actually know. And so we have to build new habits, intentional habits, to let them know how we are being obedient to the gospel. So what we do in my house is at the end of the year, when those Family Worship Center letters come that say, "Thank you for your gift of," I open them up and show them, here's what we did. And they can look at that and think, "Why are you so cheap about this? I couldn't have this, but you're giving that?" I want them to think that way. I want them to see there was sacrifice. I want them to see we said no to some things. Why? So that we could say yes to him. And we know God is able, that God will bless this family. That when there's a blessing around the corner, it's because we were faithful in our past. I want them to see, I want them to know that. So Isaac saw, he knew, he understood. And we know the story. Abraham goes on and he says, "Isaac, God will provide for himself a lamb for the burnt offering." And then it said they both went together. That answer satisfied Isaac. That's all he needed to hear. All he needed to hear was, if God will do this, then I believe God is going to do this. And something else he was willing to do, and he was plenty old to run away if he wanted to. He was old enough to crawl on top of that altar. Because he believed what his dad believed. That he had faith in God as his father had faith in God. Guys, we have a faith that is within us that we have to figure out some way, somehow, to teach and demonstrate that it is passed on to our children. I don't live this whole life and my kids think, "Oh, my dad was awesome. He could build this, do this." No. I want them to say, "My dad was a man of faith." And so this is what Isaac saw. This was all that he saw. And then we have this moment where it's the next rite of passage. And that is when Isaac was old enough to now be married. And when I say old enough, he was 40. He was 40. And it was his moment. But he was ready to be a great husband because his dad had been a great husband. How you prepare your kids for their next season is by doing well in the season you're in. Isaac could love his wife well because Abraham loved Sarah well. And guys, this is not a judgment. I think sometimes when we're in church and we hear these things, it's like, "Oh, it's so judgmental." No, we all have opportunity to change. Judgment is to say, "This is how it's been, therefore, you're done." That's judgment. Coaching is, it's halftime. We had a crummy couple of quarters. Let's get it together because the game's not over yet. That's not judgment. That is encouragement. That is coaching. That's saying, hey, we got this. We can do this. We just have to do different than we've been doing. We just can't talk to each other this way. We can't neglect each other this way. If you live a life in front of your kids neglecting each other, their marriage is going to be the same way. If you want to set your children up for a miserable life, then set them up to have a miserable marriage. If your marriage is miserable, the odds of them having a miserable marriage are really good. I don't want my kids to have a miserable life because of a miserable marriage, so I want to make sure my marriage is good. Abraham loved well, and he set his children up to love well and be loved well. And so we see this moment where it's time to pick a gal. And this is sort of the fun part. Genesis chapter 24 and verse 3 said that Abraham went to his servant and he said, swear by the Lord, the God of the heavens, God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son Isaac from among the daughters of the Canaanites, but you will go to my country and to my kindred to take a wife for my son Isaac. Like he knew the type of person for his kid. That wasn't talking about nationality. That was not talking about race. What that was talking about was, if you go to my home country and you ask somebody and you tell them the story and they're willing to leave their home country and follow you to my son Isaac, then what I know is that person is a person of faith. And just like Sarah and I had to walk by faith to get here, Rebecca will walk by faith to get here. And that means she's the one for my child. It was nothing about what you might think, and it was everything about faith. Dads. If you're already married, none of this matters. If you are not married yet, young adult, single, looking to get married, been married 8 times, looking for number 9. You marry somebody with strong faith. Marry somebody who loves Jesus as much as you do. And people are like, yeah, but they just choose to no. Then you say no. Like, well, I don't know how exactly you say no. Well, you've been saying no your whole life. Dad, can I have the car? You're 14. No. Do I have to go to school? I want to stay home today. No. I'm going to run down to the 7-Eleven and grab a vape. No. Like, it's just no. Like, we say no all the time. Dad, can I have $50? No. Dad, can I go hook up with somebody who hates Jesus? No. We act like we have zero influence over these moments. Look, if they don't love Jesus, they're not right for you. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Why? It says, for what partnership? There's nothing more of a partnership than marriage when the two become one. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? This isn't like complicated. It's been demonstrated since Genesis. If they love Jesus, then you know what? Maybe. Because you still have to get along. You still have to like them. They're still like, consider this. He goes to the place where Abraham told him to go, the servant. And he said, okay, here's what I'm looking for. Somebody that will not only bring me water, but bring water to the camels. I guess they cared about their animals. That mattered to them. Like if Ab loved cats, I don't know, it probably wouldn't have worked out because I can't do cats. I don't like cats. If you like cats, awesome. I don't like cats. If I see cats, I sneeze, my eyes swell up, it's terrible. No cats. So yes, they need to love Jesus, but you need to be attracted to them. They also need to meet, they need to do the things that you want them to do. Like that kind of stuff matters. The stuff you're gonna argue about in 5 years matters. It may not matter today, it's gonna matter. Yeah, but we kind of believe the same things. Let me just say this, if you believe in tithing and they don't believe in tithing, it's not gonna work. Why isn't it gonna work? Because they will give grudgingly. What did God say? No, I want a cheerful giver. Like if you want your house to be blessed, that's something you need to agree on. You need to agree on your prayer life. If you say, I don't believe in speaking in tongues, somebody else says, I do believe in speaking in tongues, it's probably not gonna work. Like, whoa, you would let that divide you? Yes. Why? Because when stuff comes against you and you start praying because you want to pray through, I don't want them mocking my prayer. Well, what if they don't speak in tongues? Then they need to encourage me to. They need to desire for themselves, but they also need to, Shawn, go get in your closet, pray through. We need God to move on our behalf. Right? So yeah, it needs to work. And then he moves on and he lives by this life, by this faith that was demonstrated for him. And in Genesis 26:24, it said that now the Lord appeared to Isaac and he said to Isaac, I am the God of your father Abraham. Fear not, for I am with you, and I will bless you, and I will multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. And then Isaac built an altar and called on the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there, and his servant dug a well, and they found water. Why? Because he lived by the faith that was demonstrated to him, and God blessed him. This is what we try to do with our kids. We try to raise them in the fear and in the admonition of God. And when they don't get things right, we speak to it. In Galatians chapter 4 and verse 19, he said, my little children, among whom again I'm in the anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. We don't give up until Jesus is fully formed in them. Like I rank my kids. I rank them. Deion Sanders has been doing this for years. I started doing it. I think it's a great idea. Not like I love them all, but there are weeks this one is just gonna win. This one's better than that one this week. And then the next week, trust me, it moves. Y'all wanna know where we are this week? Anybody wanna know? Here's where we are this week. Don't glare at me, Kate. So, Walt was number one this week until this morning. He's crushing life this week. He's just like crushing it. I'm like, that dude, yes. But then Claire was first one in the bedroom to say, Happy Father's Day, Dad. And in the middle of that, we're in the middle of worship at 9 o'clock. Now, 3 of them are worshiping at 11, but one of them was here at 9. And in the middle of that, there was just a great worship moment, and I turned and I'm saying, I love that, and she's saying it at the same time, I love that, and we just high five. And I'm like, number one, she just moved up from 2 to 1. She was number 2, now she pops to number 1, which dropped Walt a bit. Now, Kate, she thinks she's number 1 all the time. Kate always thinks she's number 1, and she sits up at 1 a lot, I'm gonna be honest. But this week I get home from Charlotte, and my car is gone, and the only car to get to work is her car, and I get in her car, and I turn it on, and immediately, this is what it says. Refuel now. Not like 8 miles to go, 12 miles to go. Refuel now. She took my car and left me on nothing. 1, 2, 3, a solid 3. Now, Lucy, on the other hand, Lucy's had a boyfriend since November, so she's number 4. She's gonna be number 4. So as long as Gabe's sitting over there, stage left, she's number 4. Don't glare at me, Lucy. So here we all are. We're in the boat. And dads, you've brought them as far as you can bring them. You've poured into them everything you have. You've exhausted yourself. And you've brought them to a place where they're better than you are in every way. And you can't do anymore. You've given all you have to give. You've said all you have to say. And then Jesus Christ comes by. And he says, hey, you 4, follow me. And they hop out of the house and they go follow him to that place that is greater and higher and more magnificent than you could have ever imagined, because God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above what you could ask or you imagine. And if you will follow him and you will lead them, I promise you, you will lead them all the way into his promise and his presence, and he will lead them into the fullness of his promise for them. In Jesus' name, God will do it.